Well, hi there. You're listening to Home Wizards, and I hope that when you go home, it feels like home. Cindy Dole here, Saturdays 2 to 4. This is all we talk about to make really the most important place in the world where you live, those spaces you call home, feel good, feel better, feel incredible inside and outside. And so here's the number to call if you want to join in the conversation. It's 888-KFWB-980, 888-539-2980. And maybe you have a question about how to get your home so it works better for you and your family. And there's a guy here with us who knows all too well. He's designer Stephen Saint-Onge. He knows how to make it happen. You've seen it happen on TV. He talks about it in Better Homes and Gardens and all over the place. But best of all, he's the real deal, and he has this new book that I think is really, really good that you're going to like. It's called No Place Like Home. So, Stephen, welcome to the show. I'm glad you could be here this Saturday.
I'm glad to be here as well. Thank you very much.
Well, congratulations. This really is a very sincere and well-thought-out book, and I took a look at some of your videos and all that you did, the photography. I mean, you really are a heartfelt guy. I mean, you're not just sitting there, putting out a book. I mean, you seem to really care about how we feel about our homes.
Well, I've seen in all the years of doing makeovers on television and all the magazine makeovers that I've done, and, I've been into real people's homes. And when I leave their homes after doing a project, I really want to leave them with something that they're going to be able to live with. And that's always been something that's been my sort of MO as a designer. And in the time of putting together a book, I realized, well, that's my audience. That's the group of people that I connect to. And, I'm a homeowner as well, and I'm a dad, and I'm a husband, and I happen to be a designer. And so I decided to pull together all the things that I've learned, but also keep in touch with, what home means to me and my family, and what home means to everyone else, and how to help people make their homes better and empower them. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things, is that it takes very little to make our homes better, but we have to take the time and the energy to make it happen. And hopefully this book, No Place Like Home, will help empower and excite them about their homes again.
So isn't it kind of ironic with so many of these TV shows? Here we have this radio show, the books, the blogs, the magazines, everything, and yet there's still, as you point out, a lot of us who don't like coming home to the home we live in.
It's interesting in putting the book together in the past year and photographing it as well as writing it. And I was going into real homes that I've done projects in, and some homes where I had seen along the way that I remembered had great spaces in them, and I went back. And one of the things that would come up in conversation all the time was, they don't want to have people over necessarily because their kitchen isn't, finished, or the dining room is not quite what they want it to be, so they tend not to have people come over. And they tend to ignore certain spaces because they're not quite happy with them. And I always go to the point of, well, why put it off? What are we waiting for? Why can't we make things better now? And I've seen it in my own home. If there's a project that I've put off and, I've kind of dreaded doing it, but yet when I've taken a couple hours to make it happen today, for example, my garage has been on my to-do list for the longest time, and I finally took the time to check it off my list today. It took me 2 hours. And by the end of it, I'm standing in the space, and I feel so motivated and uplifted. The energy has changed, and everything is where it's supposed to be. And it didn't take any time at all, really, or any money, really.
Are you serious?
All I did was take some time.
Yeah, well, you spent 2 hours, and now your garage looks great? That's all?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Well, you probably didn't have very much stuff in there.
Oh, it was all. I had joked. I had people over recently, and they came through the garage, and I said, "There it is. This is the behind the scenes of the Saint-Onge house. You get to see the behind the scenes of the action here." So,
okay, I want proof. I want to see those on your blog.
It,
So you got to put those before and after pictures on your blog. Come on.
There was no photography involved at all.
All right. Well, very soon I wanted to share you have some really helpful tips on repurposing things that you have, kind of like how a staging artist would work with a realtor, for someone who's going to help sell their home and so forth. But you do it for us, and then you give us some great tips on how just to spend one weekend tackling something. Again, you don't have to buy anything, but focusing on one space. But before we get to that, would you agree that it isn't the economy, that it's less about what we don't have or what we can't get because we think we want more, but just appreciating what we do have in our own comfort zone?
It's really true. I mean, really taking the time to enjoy the simple things in life again. I mean, the family, the home, our friends, and then being in that space all together is really key. And I think, given the time in the economy that we're in, I think people are realizing, we're not going on the vacations, we're not, buying this, we're not buying that. We're kind of simplifying and looking at the things that we have around us and how we can make them better. And I think one of the things that I tell people a lot is, why are you waiting for your dream home? why not make that home that you have now have part of your dream home? Maybe take the family room and make it that much better. Maybe it's got the beach house feel for that dream house, beach house that you always think about wanting to have, but down the road. But why are you putting it off, and why not make it something that you can exist with or live with now? And I think that's part of the fun of it.
And I love how one of your ways to find inspiration, I guess it has been since you were a boy, is just to go to the movies and really pay attention to, or I guess the TV shows like Mad Men or whatever, and pay attention to the sets and how their kitchen looks or how their room looks, even though it may not be realistic, but it's something that inspires you.
Well, it definitely, for me as a designer and artist, films have always been, old movies have been a huge inspiration to me. I used to sit as an 8-year-old, I remember, with a sketch pad, and I'd be watching old, Hitchcock films or whatever, and I'd be drawing the sets of the houses I was seeing in the movies. And now, as a grown-up, my wife said to me a couple of years ago, she said, when I'm preparing a client project, she'll say, you're doing it the same way you said you used to do it as a kid. You'd watch some movies, kind of get inspired, and then you start drawing. And that's still the way I work. And so it's interesting that film, to me now, and as you saw in the book No Place Like Home, is a creative tool that people who don't know what their style is in their own home can use to their advantage, because you've all seen movies that had great houses in them. Think about, It's Complicated with, the new movie that came out a couple of years ago, or Something's Gotta Give, or Father of the Bride. They all have amazing houses in them. And when you take notice of these houses, there's something that clicks with whoever you are. And there's something about those houses that's telling you that's what you love and that's what you respond to. So use those as creative tools and pick them apart. Say, is it the theme? Is it the mood of the house? Is it the furniture style? Is it the color scheme? Then you start to build your confidence about what you're drawn to. And to me, that's a creative visual, because seeing is believing in many regards.
Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if you and your loved one in life do not agree on the same movies. Does that mean that you're not going to agree on the same home decor?
Well, it's interesting because I think it starts a conversation. I've done many events around the country where I talk about design, and there are always couples in the audience who will, say, well, he wants this and I want that. And so when we talk about movies as a creative tool, then they can start to talk about movies they share in common, but yet they may have different styles in them, but there's something about that space that speaks to each of them. Mm-hmm. Then it's a matter of coming together and saying, well, what is it really? Certainly you're not going to copy the house in the movie exactly, but maybe it's a color scheme that works for you, and maybe you can meet on a happy ground, with that color scheme. So there are elements that can be pulled together. And the other thing, as you saw in the book, the lookbook is another creative tool that I urge people to do if you're using film as an inspiration, to take those ideas that you respond to and are sort of, inspired by, and put them into one book. Create a journal, create a sketchbook that brings those ideas together. And the lookbook was something my wife and I started years ago for our own home, of just pulling together ideas that we saw in magazines or in those catalogs that we all get in the mail, of rooms or furniture or styles that we saw that we wanted to remember and make note of, so that down the road, if we're making a decision about a design or we're doing a renovation project, we have the visual guides to help us and to empower us. And that's really important. And
we do that for gardens, too. It works for anything tied to your whole living experience at home. And speaking of pictures, you being the photographer, I love the idea, too, how you want us to take a picture of each room and from every angle to kind of get a perspective of how not only is it functioning, but how it really looks. I think that's a great idea.
Well, I think that, in doing the makeovers over the years, every project I do starts with a before photograph, and then as I started doing makeovers, I started photographing the process of all the projects I was doing, and then obviously the afters I would shoot just for myself, because I wanted to have the before and after for my own purposes as a designer. But most of them, if they ended up in a magazine, then you got, the beautiful styled shots in the magazine. But the journey of doing the room is something that I look at. I go back to projects I've done over the past, several years, and it's interesting to kind of look at the journey the room takes from a step-by-step process. And I thought, as I was writing the book, this is something that could really help a everyday homeowner to learn to see their rooms in a new way. And I think that's the biggest thing that the whole purpose of doing the book really was, is that people don't see what's necessarily right there under their noses every day, because they live in the house, they go through the rooms every day, and they don't see the potential of what's right there, with them.
It's like your drive to work. You kind of tune out everything. You kind of get into a routine, right?
You do, and you kind of forget. And I think the exciting part is learning to see our homes from a new perspective.
Love it.
And using photography to your advantage, or stepping back and decluttering the room, which is a big thing for me, and rearranging what you have in that space, you start to see it with new eyes. And I think that's so exciting. And again, it's not costing you any money at this point, so that's a very good thing.
But you didn't take pictures of your garage. I can't believe
at this
it.
Point, I just wanted to check it off my list.
All right, well, when we come back, we want your help with the weekend makeover idea, how you want us to just pick one room and maybe sit in there and then start making some changes on what furniture is going to stay. And I love this concept. Wait to hear what he suggests about the accessories, not only in that room that you're going to fix this weekend, but maybe other areas of the house you can pick and choose. So don't go away. We're talking with wonderful designer Stephen Saint-Onge, author of No Place Like Home. Cindy Dole here, Home Wizards. We're back in a few. All right, we're going to talk. Cindy Dole here, Home Wizards, where we talk about going home and making it feel better. And who better to help us with all that? Designer Stephen Saint-Onge, who's just finished his garage in a couple hours. And he's also had a great book that's going to help us master whatever space in your home right now is just not quite right. His book's called No Place Like Home. So, Stephen, thanks for hanging out on your Saturday. I know it's a little bit later on the East Coast, so I appreciate you being with us today.
No, this is wonderful, and I love talking about home, so anytime.
Yeah, you got it.
Problem.
Well, so let's get to that weekend makeover, and I think you really simplify it, because a lot of us put things off, whether it's decluttering, whether it's anything on the to-do list, because it all just gets so overwhelming. But you really pare it down to a way of focusing on one thing, one room, and we start on Friday night. Now, we're already to Saturday, but we can still start tonight, right?
Yeah, I think that really what it is trying to do a makeover in your own home in a short period of time. The reason why I thought that was important is so many people get distracted when they start a project. They get sort of, they procrastinate a little bit. They
and discouraged.
So you want to get it done in a short period of time, because what it's going to do is it's going to excite you about that room, but it's also going to make you feel a little bit more confident about tackling the next project, because you're going to see the end results. And I think that's really important. So by doing it as a weekend makeover, Saturday and Sunday, Friday and Saturday, whatever it is, or even just a couple hours. I mean, that's the big thing. On a Friday night, I urge people that, if you don't feel comfortable doing it yourself, well, instead of your book club, maybe you do a design club, and you get a couple of your friends together once a month, and you do it, one home 1 month, and then go to the next one the next month. But the idea is that you want to get it done and turn it around. And the big thing is picking one room that's doable, and I usually recommend a room that you spend a lot of time in so that you can enjoy the space afterwards. So say it's your family room, or maybe it's your dining room, but taking the room and, like you said, I break it down so that it's attainable, so that it's not overwhelming, because that's the worst thing, is to feel like, oh, I can't get it done, and then you leave and walk away, and then it's an unfinished room, and that's not what you want.
Well, and then you have a bad taste in your mouth about home improvement projects, and then it just goes on and on. So you suggest that we make a list as we're just kind of studying the room. Let's say it is the family room. We're in there. That's where we live most of the time, right? We make a list of what we visualize should stay and what should go?
That's a big thing. I mean, there's always a room in the house that has that piece of furniture that when people come over, you say, oh, well, don't look at that chair. It's seen better days, whatever. Move it out of the space. And, in some cases you can put it in the garage, or you can donate it, or you can sell it on, Craigslist or something. But the idea is that you want to get rid of what doesn't work in the room and get rid of the negative, if you will, and only keep the positive, good things. So if you've got a great sofa, keep that in there. If you've got great end tables, great. But you want to get rid of the things that get in the way of seeing the room's potential. And a lot of times there's a lot of clutter, so getting rid of that extra stuff that doesn't need to be there and paring it down, because you really want to get it down to the basics. When I do a makeover for television or for magazines, this is how I go about it. And you get it down to the basics and work with the good things. So once you have it there, and if you're taking pictures and documenting your whole process, this would be, once you get it down to the basics, take a shot of that. Because you want to remember how you went through this process, so that at the end of it, the goal is to be able to show it off to everybody and say, look what you accomplished and how great it looks.
I also love how you remove all the accessories, those little tchotchkes, whether it's a candle or it's books or, whatever decorative things that you have in the room, to take them all out and put them like on a dining table as a prop area. To explain how that works.
Yeah, every time I do a project, no matter where I am, I always set up an area in another adjoining room that's called my prop room. So, I treat the room that I'm creating almost like a movie set. You're creating a stage where you're going to live your life in it. So you want to have the props standing by that are going to sort of finish off the space. And so if it's a dining room table or it's the floor of the adjacent room, get everything together that's in the room that you're taking apart. Obviously, if there are things that you do not want to bring back into the room, then move those away and don't include them in the prop room. But I like the idea that you gather things that, to me, that's always the fun part of the project, is bringing the final details of the room into the space. So you want to have them standing by, ready to go. And I've learned this from years of doing makeovers on television, where you've got cameras rolling and you've got tight deadlines and you've got to get it done. Those props standing by and being organized are the thing that you want to bring in and you want to have at your fingertips. So that's the thing to get yourself ready for.
And it gives you an idea of how many candles you have, and maybe you have too many. Or like the beach setting, you've got like 10 shells. Oh, now I can put them in a little collection area or something like that.
Well, that's the thing, is people have too much stuff, and after a while you don't see, well, how much stuff do you have that would really be something that you could, bring some attention to, and you kind of forget all those things. But as you start to take it away, you realize, like you said, I've got 10 shells. Well, that would be great with that bowl that I had in the other space. So that's great. I can bring that together. So you start to see things creatively, and that's what makes it fun. I mean, the whole point is it's not supposed to be stressful. It's supposed to be an enjoyable process.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And how do we avoid making a collection as opposed to making it feel like a flea market? I mean, how do we avoid the collection mess look?
Well, I think one of the things is using your surfaces, whether they be your coffee table or your console table or your bookshelves, where you're going to have things on display. Be wise about how much you put there. I mean, you don't want to overload it. I think simpler is always better. And the other thing that I like too is that you can always change out those details over time. You can have certain props out on your coffee table for a couple months, and then you change your mind, you put those away, and then you bring out something new. So knowing that you can always rotate these things kind of makes a lot of people feel better, because they're not getting rid of it necessarily, and it's not always going to be on display. So thinking simpler is better is usually a safe bet for you.
But let's say that we do need to get rid of something, because we've made our list for this weekend makeover in the family room, and we decided that maybe that recliner, that we inherited, not so much. So we've decided that we're going to put that to the garage, or we're going to donate it, or whatever. How do we then reassemble the things that are on our keep list with the accessories, and then also go, okay, now maybe we need a coat of paint, or we're going to add a little fresh something?
Well, I think once you get the room down to the basics, I always tell people, play around with the placement of the furniture. And again, this is something that can be done that same night, because one of the biggest things that I saw across the country was that people do furniture up against the wall. The sofa is on one wall, and then the TV's on the other, and the chairs are kind of spread out, and it's always kind of this circle mentality. So I tell people, play around with the placement of the seating arrangements in a family room, for example, where you're creating groupings, because you want your eye to be drawn into these areas. One of the biggest things that I can tell people to do is really stand in the entrance to the room. What do you notice when you enter into the room? And so by changing the furniture around, you can create a focal point that draws your eye in, whether it be from the foyer or it be from another, like a dining room or whatever it is. But what are you seeing first? Because when I shoot a magazine spread, I'm using that mentality. That first impression that draws you in and invites you into that room is really what is going to help you guide the placement of the furniture.
And in terms of making that family room truly a livable family room, but we have kids and we have stuff, and we want to make it, hey, not one of those places where we don't sit on the furniture because it's, it's just prim and proper. We want to have a nice time. How do you blend all that?
Well, I'm a dad. I've got, little kids running around, and I've got animals, and, there's always something going on. And it's all about comfort first. And I tell people, obviously the good pieces that you have in your room, they should be family-friendly. They should be washable. They should be things that you can maintain if you've got, kids around. One of the things I think, especially if we're talking about a family room in this case, having zones within that room. So you've got the grouping, of the furniture where maybe it's around the fireplace, and you can watch the TV from there, but also what other kind of area can you create where the kids can have their space too, whether it be, their toy storage, which is organized with baskets and cubbies or whatever, but also a table or a place for them to sit as well, so that they're part of that space. And that's always important to me if there's, sort of a family with various ages of kids, because obviously that room is where they're going to spend a lot of time. But you want it to be organized. And one of the biggest things with toys and with little kid stuff is that people tend to have too much variety of stuff, and they have it all out in one place. And at the end of the day, the kids really only play with a couple of things at a time, and they show interest in a few things during the course of the week. So I'm a big fan of rotating the toys out.
All right,
not necessarily having everything out at one time.
Stephen, you rock. We love you. Want to have you back on the show. Good luck with your book, No Place Like Home. Check him out. His website, stephensaint-onge.com. It's a PH as in Stephen and ONGE. You're great. Talk to you again, okay?
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
You got it. As we segue with little Katy Perry, we have some more fun to talk about in the next hour, like if critters are turning your garden into a buffet. We have help on the way. Cindy Dole, Home Wizards. The fun continues.